My name is Ellie. Even though it's only been a week since I lost my father, my husband Fred approached me with a worried look, bringing up the topic of inheritance. Ellie, we need to discuss the inheritance in more detail. We might face difficulties later on if we don't. Come on, Fred. My dad just passed away. Can't we talk about this later? Fred looked at me apologetically, searching for the right words. That's when my sister Kate chimed in. Ellie, the inheritance process can be time-consuming. It's better to get it sorted sooner to avoid future issues. You think so too, sis? But I just want to reminisce about Dad for a bit longer. I understand how you feel. But the inheritance is a separate issue. Getting the complicated process out of the way might give us time to reflect on memories with Dad. Indeed, inheritance disputes are common. However, in our family's case, our mother passed away a long time ago, and only Kate and I are eligible for the inheritance. So I argued, why the rush? But if it's just the two of us, can't we take our time to discuss? Kate took a deep breath. Actually, I was surprised to find out that Dad wrote a will. I mean, it's just the two of us inheriting. But this envelope, it feels like it contains his heartfelt wishes. Wait, Dad wrote a will? Kate nodded. Yes, he wrote it while he was in the hospital. He entrusted it to me, she said, handing me a pristine white envelope. I gazed at the envelope for a while. Why did he have to think of this, Dad? Kate gently took my hand. He had a long battle with illness. He probably wanted to ensure he had no regrets, thinking about our future. I vividly reminded of the day a year ago when our father was suddenly diagnosed with cancer. By the time it was discovered, treatment was challenging, and Dad knew his time was limited. Since then, he had been doing everything he could for us. When I was lost in memories, Fred tapped my shoulder. First, let's open the will and understand Dad's wishes. I nodded and turned to Kate. Yeah, sis, go ahead and open it. However, Kate hesitated for a moment, looking somewhat troubled. What's wrong, sis? Is there something you're worried about? Kate pondered before speaking. Wait, are we sure we should just open the will like this? Maybe we should consult a professional first? In this unfamiliar situation, she looked more serious than usual. After some thought, I felt she might be right. Fred suggested, hey, I know a lawyer, a guy named Johnson. Want to consult him? A few hours later, Mr. Johnson arrived at our house. He greeted us with a smile. Can I take a look at the will? Kate handed over the will with a hint of nervousness. It's precious, please handle it with care. Johnson carefully broke the seal, read it, and remarked, everything seems in order. No issues here. So, what does it say? Fred eagerly asked. All the inheritance is to go to the younger daughter's husband, Fred. At that moment, Kate's face was a mix of shock and confusion. Wait. Why everything to Fred? Isn't that strange? Johnson replied with a concerned look. It clearly states so here. This is your father's wish. We can't do anything about it. Kate hastily snatched the will from Johnson, seemingly verifying his words. The shock made her sit down on the floor. Seeing Kate like that, Fred looked puzzled. So, does this mean I get all of Dad's inheritance? Something felt off. Unconvinced, I gently took the will from Kate and read it over and over again. No matter how many times I read it, Fred's name was clearly written. What was even more unbelievable was that it said only I should renounce my inheritance. It was written that Kate could claim her reserved portion of the inheritance. I thought to myself, is this for real? Seeing me in such a state, Fred asked, "Ellie, are you okay? Is something bothering you?" Feeling overwhelmed, I looked at him and asked, "Why has it come to this?" "Fred, what does this mean?" He took a moment and then said, "I don't know. But if your father-in-law decided it, we have to accept it. We are a married couple, we'll figure it out." Trying to comfort me. Yet, I wondered, is that really the right thing? "Ellie, we should prepare the inheritance renunciation documents according to your father-in-law's will." Why do we need inheritance renunciation documents? Well, in simple terms, it's a way to express the intention of not accepting the inheritance. It's especially useful when there's a lot of debt or complicated repayment situations. Fred, gesturing with his hands, explained in a light tone, sometimes inheritances might hide more debts than expected. If you inherit that, it could turn into unexpected burdens. That's where inheritance renunciation comes in. But I've never heard of my father having such huge debts. Fred smiled. Perhaps it's because he was a businessman. Maybe it's about company matters, like loans. He might have been worried about that. Loans, like when a company borrows money? Yes, exactly. It's the money needed to run a company. And it needs to be repaid. Your father-in-law probably didn't want to burden you with that. Suddenly, I remembered the reasons my father worked late and the serious expressions he occasionally wore. Maybe they were all because he wanted to protect the family. I see. That's why he suggested I renounce my inheritance. I felt like I understood my father's feelings a little better. Thank you, Fred, I thought to myself. Ellie, let's ask Mr. Johnson to clarify the inheritance renunciation. Yeah, that's best. Thank you. This became the trigger for me to start the inheritance renunciation process. My part went smoothly, but Kate's situation wasn't that easy. After several discussions between the two, Fred finally compromised a bit and increased Kate's share, and the procedure was finally settled. Time flew by, and it's been half a year since my father passed away. It's amazing how quickly time flies. The inheritance he left behind was a staggering $5 million. I knew he was a businessman, but I had no idea he had that much money. I don't know much about it, and thinking won't get me any answers. So, I decided to gratefully accept it. However, one day after a tiring day at work, I came home to an eerily empty house. What happened? Walking around the house, I noticed that some furniture and items were missing. Could it be a burglary? Wait, seriously? This is bad. I hurriedly called Fred. Hello, Ellie? What's wrong? You sound panicked. Fred, I came home and was shocked. Some of the furniture is gone. Oh, is that all? Wait, so you're saying this isn't a burglary? Yeah, it's not a burglary. I felt a strange relief in Fred's voice. I waited for him to explain, a mix of surprise and confusion. So, what happened? Why is everything? Actually, I took some things. I moved them. Why? Why would you take things without telling me? Feeling a mess of anger and surprise, I confronted Fred, who nonchalantly replied, I moved to a new place. A new place? Why didn't you tell me? There were reasons. I thought maybe we needed some time apart. I've been thinking about divorce. What? Divorce? Why would you? Suddenly hit with this news, I was at a loss for words. I thought we got along well. Fred had always supported me. Why would he suddenly bring up divorce? Yeah, I guess I surprised you, huh? Surprised? It's more than that. Explain yourself. Well, there's something I've been struggling with. I've been seeing another woman for some time, and I'm thinking of starting a new life with her. For a moment, I couldn't understand what he was saying. He had never mentioned anything like this before. I then remembered the recent settlement of my father's estate. Could this confession at such a time have been planned from the start? A hint of suspicion crossed my mind. Wait, did you do something with my father's will? I did ask him, but I don't think I told him not to give it to you. I suddenly remembered Fred's unapologetic smile. With that smile, I felt as if I could imagine the cunning way he influenced my father. Why are you doing this? We've been together for so long. Say whatever you want. But look at what's on the table. Looking as directed, I saw the divorce papers. Why would you do this? I won't divorce you. The only words of resistance I could muster. I couldn't think of anything else. Then, Fred began to indirectly expose my secret. Ellie, even if you refuse the divorce, you can't go back to that house. And, by the way, your father-in-law mentioned that you got a new apartment, is that true? My heart raced, unsure of how to respond. About that. Fred chuckled. It's okay. There's no need to hide. You bought it with your own money, and I don't intend to take it away. In truth, this was an event that occurred just before my father passed away. Amidst my confusion about my father's sudden hospitalization, he unexpectedly called me to his hospital room and made a proposal. My father, with a serious look, said, Ellie, I have a favor to ask. Can you buy a new apartment? Why the sudden request? After a moment of thought, my father replied, I need a place to keep something very important. Can you afford a reasonably priced apartment? Confused, I considered my life with Fred and suggested, why not bring whatever it is to where Fred and I currently live? My father nodded and said, that's a good idea, but it's a rental. He continued, just do as I say. If you do, I'll give you some money. In the end, I bought an apartment near a station in a convenient location to fulfill my father's wish. He then gave me an amount that exceeded the cost as a token of gratitude. I hadn't told Kate or Fred about this. I properly paid the gift tax, and my father had emphasized keeping it a secret. The fact that Fred knew was an unexpected twist. Considering that Fred now knew, there seemed to be no point in continuing to hide it. So, you're saying you want me to live in that apartment by myself? Yes. It's probably too big and lonely for just one person, right? I suppose. Hearing my response, Fred's voice sounded relieved. Then, send divorce papers properly. After that, you can come. Come to where? To your parents' house. Your home. A question arose in my mind, and I whispered to Fred. When you say home, are you with my sister? Fred took his time before replying, correct. Shocked and taken aback, my voice trembled. Why? Why with my sister? I realized how foolish my question had been. Fred had an affair and said he wanted a divorce. And he chose my sister as his new life partner. The answer was already clear. You don't get it? Then let me make it clear. I've been dating your sister. That's all there is to it. That's cruel. Exactly. So accept it already. That was why the atmosphere was awkward over the inheritance. Was that all part of your plan too? Well, yeah. Regardless of the circumstances, the inheritance was always meant to end up with us. Considering all this, Kate and Fred had been conspiring from the very beginning. That's why my sister accepted such a small share of the inheritance. And once things were settled with me, they'd start their new life together. That way, the inheritance from my husband would go to my sister. Realizing all this weighed heavily on my heart. I'd been led by my husband's words and had given up the inheritance I was supposed to receive. And to think that even my own sister, whom I trusted wholeheartedly, was behind all this. Tears welled up in my eyes. Ignoring my emotions, I heard my husband's voice on the other end of the phone. You get it, right? This isn't the time to cry. Just send the divorce papers before you come to see me. Enough. I get it. As long as you understand. I'll pay spousal support as you say, so just let it go. His voice had a gleeful nuance to it. The sound lingered in my ears even after I hung up. I don't even know what to do anymore. In my confusion, I went to the city court and filled out the divorce papers. Then, I headed to my parents' home. As I approached the house, I heard Kate and Fred's cheerful conversation. I mean, I feel a bit bad for her, but she should have noticed, right? Yeah. I always greeted you with a smile when you came over, but inside I was holding back laughter. Now, we can finally live freely together. Well, yeah, but it all depends on whether she signs or not. Of course she will. Betrayed by those she trusted and not getting the inheritance. Hearing their conversation filled my heart with pain and anger. I took several deep breaths, trying to calm down. You'll see. I'll never forgive you. But for now, I wanted to end my involvement with these two as soon as possible. With that strong desire, I entered the house. I submitted the divorce papers. This is what you two wanted, right? All right, this will do. Ellie, this is goodbye. Hold on, Fred. You haven't forgotten about the property division, have you? How much are you thinking? $30,000 in total. That's reasonable, isn't it? If I asked for more, it might lead to court battles or prolonged disputes. I don't want the hassle, and more importantly, I don't want to be involved with Fred or my sister any longer. So I mentioned the standard amount. What? $30,000? Isn't that a bit much? Fred looked surprised and then discontent. If that's not acceptable, we can go to court. Ugh, the court would be a hassle. Fine, fine. I'll pay. While glaring at a resigned-looking Fred, I suggested, let's discuss the details with the lawyers. By lawyer, do you mean Johnson? I'm not relying on your lawyer friend to manage everything. I plan to consult someone I know. Oh, I see. You have such a reliable lawyer as an acquaintance. His name is Tony, and he's the lawyer who also helped my dad. Tony really came to my aid when I purchased an apartment for my father. He sincerely helped with the finances and the procedures. It seemed he had known my dad for a long time. I trusted Tony and felt that I could safely leave everything in his hands. After returning home, I took a deep breath and called Tony. Tony, I've gotten into a bit of a mess. And decided to tell him everything. It's okay, Ellie. Don't worry. Leave everything to me from now on. Thank you. That alone makes me feel a little better. You're moving to that new apartment, right? Yes, the one my dad talked about before. It seems like a calm place. That's nice. But does Fred know the location of that apartment? He seemed to know about the purchase, but then it might be best not to tell him the location. And for a while, let's avoid direct contact with Fred and communicate through me. Oh, okay. But why? Well, to avoid any troubles. Just relax and leave it to me. Tony's voice always had warmth, and I finally felt a sense of relief. After hanging up the phone, I took another deep breath to calm myself. My time in this room was running short. Let's start a new life, I told myself. Looking around the room, I saw that my husband's belongings were already packed, while mine were scattered everywhere. I won't stay in this room much longer. I quickly packed my essential belongings into a suitcase. Taking a break, I picked up the keys to my new apartment. This new place was arranged for me by my father. It's a place filled with my father's love. When I opened the door to the apartment, I was greeted by the fresh scent of a new home. In a corner, a cardboard box was placed, filled with belongings my father cherished. Oh, I still have some of Dad's things left at the family home. I need to pick them up. Over the next few days, I took time off work and traveled between my family home and my new apartment, arranging my father's belongings and preparing for my new life. In the midst of adjusting to this new routine, I received a call from Tony. Ellie, how's life in your new home? Thank you, Tony. I'm still adjusting, but every day feels refreshing and fun. Is there something you wanted to discuss? The divorce details have finally been settled. The compensation has been properly paid. I'm thinking of transferring it to your account. Is that okay? Oh, everything's done? That's a relief. Can you come to the office then? I'd like to meet face to face to confirm a few things. Oh, right. There's also the matter of the payment, right? Understood. A few days later, I arrived at Tony's law office as scheduled. We discussed the details of the divorce, the procedures, and the compensation. After wrapping up the discussion, by the way, it seems your sister has chosen to marry Fred. Is that so? I know it must have been tough, but if anything comes up in the future, please rely on me. And since this is personal advice, of course, there's no charge. With a gentle smile, he reassured me. As I was about to leave the office, expressing my gratitude, the door suddenly slammed open, revealing an angry Fred shouting, "Is the lawyer named Tony here? Oh, Ellie. I need to talk to you." Fred's large steps resounded as he walked toward me. His momentum was intimidating, making me tense up. However, in a split second, Tony stood protectively in front of me. "Fred, we're inside an office. Can we talk calmly?" Tony then led Fred to a seating area with a sofa and had him sit down. "Fred, what brings you here today?" "Well, I actually want the compensation back." "Is the compensation for Ellie?" Fred, with his face red with anger, said, "Exactly. That's it. I'm having some trouble." Still, Tony calmly continued to reassure him. The matter of compensation was supposed to be agreed upon by both of us. "Did you have unexpected expenses or something?" "Yes, I suddenly need some money. If you could return it, it would really help." Both Tony and I were a little surprised by Fred's sudden proposal. With a playful tone, Tony said, "Didn't you get a $5 million inheritance, Fred?" Fred, with a somewhat embarrassed but proud smile, responded, "Well, yes, but..." Then, Fred looked at me and said, "Actually, Ellie, I have a proposal for you. How about we split the inheritance again? Why are you bringing this up now?" Fred, with a grimace, replied, "I've been feeling guilty that you didn't get anything. Don't you think it would be fair for you to receive something too? So, in exchange, you want the compensation returned?" Fred nodded and said, "Yes, I think that's fair." "What do you think?" Tony interjected, "That's a bit complicated. Ellie has already renounced the inheritance. It's not possible." Fred, irritated by this, said, "But I want to share with her." "You have no right to interfere." Just then, the office door opened with a bang, and Kate rushed in, panting and sweating. She seemed to be in a hurry. Kate, with anger in her eyes, said to me, "Ellie, what's the meaning of this? You're not enjoying putting me in such a difficult situation, are you? What happened? Why are you so upset all of a sudden? You knew that our father was a guarantor for someone's debt, didn't you?" "Guarantor? What does that mean?" Kate, wide-eyed, exclaimed, "You're hiding it, aren't you? Our father became a guarantor for someone, and that person seems to have run away. Now, the debt is being claimed from our father. Apparently, our father had become a guarantor for someone, who then disappeared, defaulting on the repayment. As a result, a payment notice was sent to our father. Moreover, our father is no longer alive. As a result, the debt is being claimed from the heirs, Fred and Kate." Tony, with a gentle smile, said, "Well, it seems the two of you will have to repay it." Kate, looking flustered, replied, "We hardly have any money left. Once you've received the inheritance, you have obligations related to it. However, Ellie has already chosen to renounce it, so she has no responsibility. Can I renounce the inheritance now?" "I'm sorry, Kate. Once you've touched the inheritance, it's difficult to renounce it. And the period to make that choice has already passed." Kate, tapping the table with her nails in frustration, said loudly, "What should I do now?" In the midst of this, Fred calmly spoke to me. "It seems our father-in-law borrowed money from various places, not just banks but also friends and acquaintances. Because of that, the money I received ran out quickly. What about the compensation you gave me at that time?" Fred, with a wry smile, continued, "Well, new debts kept emerging. I thought perhaps our father was optimistic that if he could repay the loans related to his business, he could enjoy a more relaxed life in his later years. However, according to Fred, debts and obligations that our father had hidden came to light. The money he had was depleted because of these debts, which is why he wanted to get the compensation back from me." After explaining everything, Fred begged desperately, "I'm truly sorry, but can you return the money? Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to borrow from some dangerous people. You remember how much you hurt me and suddenly ended our relationship, right?" Fred was left speechless and downcast by my cold behavior. Next to him, his sister smugly stared at me. "You wouldn't think of taking care of your divorced husband, would you? But you can't abandon a kind sister like me, right? After stealing someone's husband, you have the nerve to say that. Well, he came to me on his own and wooed me. But you two started a new life together, right? Well, we had some money." Fed up, I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "He told me, you two were dating from the beginning, weren't you?" Kate looked surprised and turned to Fred. Why did you tell her that? Fred looked apologetic and nodded. It's all because of what you said. Look what's happened. I know. But, given the circumstances and feelings at that time, it couldn't be helped. A tense atmosphere began to develop between Fred and Kate. I just stared at them in disbelief, truly not knowing how to respond. Tony seemed a bit perplexed by the atmosphere as well, saying, I'm sorry, but can you refrain from having a marital dispute here? Wait. Ellie, please help. Can you lend me some money? Kate's desperate face and the downcast Fred behind her. They were then escorted out by Tony. I later found out that Fred and Kate had borrowed money from a shady place. If they couldn't repay it, they'd have no choice but to work on a crab fishing boat. Tony had respectfully declined their SOS on my behalf. While having tea with Tony, he kindly smiled at me and said, I made sure to refuse them. Do you feel a bit relieved now? After a while, I heard that Fred and Kate in fact had been put on a crab fishing boat. After a series of tumultuous events, my heart feels somewhat light now. Sure, there were many hardships and worries. But amidst all that, I found a ray of light. It's my relationship with Tony. I feel like our distance has been closing, bit by bit. Of course, Tony might just be concerned for me, but my heart is filled with a gentle warmth. I don't know where this new relationship will lead, but I cherish this feeling and want to move forward step by step.